I never imagined that one day I would sit in front of a camera and share my story with the world. My name is Daniel, and for a long time I carried a secret battle inside me, one that I believed I would never win. To those who saw me from the outside, I looked fine, always smiling, always pretending to be okay. But behind those smiles, I was breaking apart. Depression had stolen my will to live, leaving me trapped in a darkness that felt endless. If you've ever felt that weight pressing on your chest, you'll understand what I mean. But before you turn away thinking this is just another sad story, I want you to stay with me. Because what I'm about to share is not only about pain, it's about the incredible strength I found, the faith that lifted me when nothing else could, and the way my darkest season turned into a light that now guides others. I remember waking up every morning wishing I had. My body was heavy, my thoughts louder than any sound in the room, constantly whispering that I wasn't enough, that the world would be better without me. Those whispers became screams. I hid it well, even from my family and closest friends. I didn't want to burden anyone, so I wore my mask every day, pretending I was okay, while inside I was drowning. And yet, in the middle of that silent war, something unexpected happened. Something that changed everything. I'll get there soon, but first, you need to understand how deep the darkness went, because only then will you see the miracle that came after. One night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor for what felt like hours. The silence was unbearable. I asked myself a question I had been avoiding for months. What was the point of living like this? And for the first time, I felt a tear roll down my face, not because I was sad. I'd already been sad for too long, but because I felt completely empty. That emptiness was scarier than pain. And yet, right in that emptiness, when I thought I had lost everything, I heard something. A small voice inside me. It wasn't mine. It was calm, steady, and it said, "Hold on. You are not alone." That was the moment everything began to shift. At first, I doubted myself. I thought maybe I was imagining things, that my exhausted mind was just playing tricks on me. But that night was different. The voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was so clear that it echoed in the silence of my room. "You are not alone." I repeated those words over and over again in my mind, trying to believe them. I hadn't prayed in years. Honestly, I was angry at God. If He existed, why would He allow me to suffer like this? Why would He let me feel so lost and broken? Still, something inside me told me to kneel, to just try one more time. With shaky hands, I clasped them together and whispered words I hadn't spoken in so long. "God, if you are real, if you can hear me, please help me." I didn't feel fireworks. The darkness didn't vanish instantly. But for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of warmth inside me, as if someone had lit a small candle in the middle of the night. It wasn't enough to chase all the shadows away, but it was enough to make me want to keep breathing. The following days weren't easy. Depression doesn't disappear overnight. I still woke up with heavy thoughts, but now I had a new weapon, hope. Every morning, I would repeat those words in my mind, "You are not alone." Every night, before closing my eyes, I whispered another prayer. Some nights I cried myself to sleep, but the difference was, now I believed someone was listening. Slowly, I started to notice small changes. The things I had lost interest in, like listening to music or stepping outside, began to feel less impossible. I remember one morning when I opened my window and felt the sunlight on my face. It was such a simple thing, but it felt like a miracle. For months, I hadn't even cared to see the sky. And that morning, I realized something powerful. Healing doesn't always come in giant leaps. Sometimes it comes in small, steady steps. I wish I could say that faith alone erased all my struggles, but the truth is, it was a process filled with ups and downs. Some days I felt like I was climbing a mountain. Other days, it felt like I had rolled all the way back to the bottom. But every time I stumbled, I remembered the voice, the warmth, and the promise that I wasn't walking alone. Depression had made me believe I was worthless, but faith started to whisper a different story. It told me I was loved. It told me I had a purpose. And little by little, I began to search for that purpose. I started journaling my thoughts, writing down every prayer, every moment of pain, and every glimpse of hope. That journal became my lifeline. Whenever I doubted myself, I would look back at the words I had written during my lowest moments and see how far I had come. There was one particular night I'll never forget. I was overwhelmed again, feeling like I couldn't keep going. I opened my journal, ready to spill out all my pain, but instead of writing, I just stared at the page. And then I felt it, the same presence I had felt that first night, but stronger. It was as if the room was filled with peace, and in that peace, I heard another whisper in my heart. Your pain will become your story, and your story will help others. Those words changed everything. For the first time, I understood that my suffering wasn't meaningless. That maybe, just maybe, everything I was going through would one day serve a bigger purpose. I didn't know how or when, but I decided to hold on to that promise. From then on, I started to see my healing not just as survival, but as preparation for something greater. Faith gave me the courage to open up about what I was going through, something I never thought I would do. At first, I shared small pieces with a close friend. My voice shook, my hands trembled, but the moment I spoke, I felt a weight lift off my chest. And to my surprise, my friend didn't look at me with pity or judgment. Instead, he said, "Daniel, I felt the same way before." That moment was eye-opening. For so long, I believed I was alone in my battle, but in reality, so many people were silently fighting the same war. That conversation lit a fire inside me. I realized that sharing my story could break the silence for others too. So I started to speak more. First with my family, then with small groups at church, and eventually with anyone who was willing to listen. Each time I opened up, I felt stronger. Each time, I saw how my pain could connect with someone else's heart. But the most powerful part wasn't just telling my story. It was listening to theirs. People began to share their battles, their fears, and their silent cries for help. I realized how many lives were hidden behind smiles, just like mine had been. And in those conversations, I discovered something beautiful. When we bring our pain into the light, it loses some of its power. It was around that time that I truly understood why faith had pulled me out of the darkness. It wasn't only to save me, it was to equip me to reach others. My healing wasn't just mine. It was meant to ripple outward, touching lives I had never even met yet. That realization gave me purpose, and purpose gave me strength. The more I shared, the more opportunities opened. One day, I was invited to speak at a youth gathering. Standing on that stage, looking out at dozens of faces, I felt the same nervousness I once had when I first confessed my struggles to a friend. But then I remembered the promise, your pain will become your story, and your story will help others. I took a deep breath and began to speak. I told them about the nights I cried alone, about the whispers of worthlessness that haunted me, about the emptiness that nearly consumed me. And then I told them about the voice, the prayers, and the slow, steady return of hope. As I spoke, I saw tears in the eyes of those listening. But more than that, I saw connection. They weren't just hearing a story, they were seeing themselves in it. Afterward, so many came up to me, some with trembling voices, saying, "Daniel, that's my story too." I thought I was alone. Those words broke me and healed me at the same time. I realized then that my journey through darkness had equipped me with something priceless, the ability to show others that they were not alone either. From that day forward, I no longer saw my past as a curse. I saw it as a testimony that faith, hope, and resilience could overcome even the heaviest shadows. And with every person who connected with my story, I felt a deeper sense of calling. I knew this was only the beginning. Sharing publicly wasn't always easy. The internet can be cruel, and I was afraid of judgment. But for every negative comment, there were dozens of messages from people thanking me for giving them courage to keep fighting. Some wrote to me, saying my words stopped them from giving up. Others said they had finally opened up to someone for the first time after hearing my story. And every time I read those messages, I cried. Because in those moments, I saw the full circle. The voice that once saved me in the silence of my room was now echoing through my story into the lives of others. I began to dedicate myself to this mission. I created spaces online to talk about mental health, faith, and hope. I reminded people that it was okay to not be okay. But it was never okay to stay silent. Because silence keeps us in chains, but vulnerability breaks them. The more I gave, the more I received in return. Love, connection, and a sense of fulfillment I had never known before. There were still hard days, of course. Depression doesn't simply vanish forever. But now, whenever the darkness tried to return, I had tools, faith, and a community that reminded me of who I was. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. And I no longer believed the lie that my life had no value. Instead, I believed the truth, my life had a mission. Looking back now, I see my journey in a way I couldn't back then. Depression tried to silence me, but faith gave me a voice. Pain tried to destroy me, but hope gave me purpose. I used to ask, why me? Why this suffering? But today, I can see the answer so clearly, because my story was never meant to end in silence. It was meant to inspire. When I think about that broken version of myself, the boy sitting in his room, wondering if life was worth it, I wish I could hug him and whisper what I now know. Hold on. This pain will not last forever. One day, you'll stand in front of others and show them that light is real. That healing is possible. That faith is stronger than fear. And if you're listening to me right now, if you're in that dark place, wondering if you can make it through, this is for you. You are not alone. Your story is still being written. And even if you can't see it now, there is a day coming when you will look back and realize that the very thing you thought would break you actually built you into someone stronger. Today, I no longer hide behind a mask. I live openly, knowing that vulnerability is not weakness, but courage. Every scar I carry has become proof of survival, proof that even in the darkest chapters, life still has meaning. And every time someone writes to me saying, "Daniel, your story gave me hope," I'm reminded of why I'm still here. I'm not here because I never felt broken. I'm here because I refuse to let the brokenness define me. And the truth is, you can do the same. You don't need to have all the answers, and you don't need to be strong all the time. All you need is to take one step, then another, trusting that each small movement forward is a victory in itself. My faith didn't take away every battle, but it gave me the strength to fight them. And in fighting, I discovered who I really am, a survivor, a storyteller, and above all, a believer that no matter how deep the darkness gets, the light will always find a way to shine. This is my story, but it doesn't end with me. It continues with every person who hears these words and chooses to hold on for one more day. If my journey has shown me anything, it's that hope is contagious. And I pray that today you catch just enough of it to believe in yourself again. Because your life matters. Your story matters. And someday, you too will look back and see that the pain you endured became the reason someone else found the courage to live. That is the power of faith. That is the gift hidden inside the struggle. And that is why I will never stop sharing my story, because even if it saves just one more life, it will always be worth it. Life often teaches us its deepest lessons in the quietest, most painful moments. Daniel's journey through depression and his discovery of faith is not just a story about survival. It's a mirror reflecting struggles many of us face in our daily lives. Maybe it's not depression for everyone. For some, it's the crushing weight of financial stress, the heartbreak of a broken relationship, the loneliness of feeling invisible, or the endless chase of dreams that never seem to come true. We all have our personal battles, silent wars fought behind smiles and routines. Yet Daniel's testimony reminds us of something universal. Even in our darkest seasons, there is always a whisper of hope waiting to be heard. The truth is, most of us don't notice it because we're too focused on the noise of our pain. But if we pause, if we dare to listen, we might realize that strength, faith, and courage have been quietly waiting inside us all along. Think about the small victories in your own life. Maybe you dragged yourself out of bed on a day you didn't want to face the world. Maybe you made it through a difficult conversation that you feared for weeks. Maybe you smiled at a stranger while fighting your own tears. These are not insignificant moments. They are acts of resilience. Just like Daniel opening his window and feeling the sunlight for the first time after months of darkness, our everyday steps, however small, carry profound meaning. We often dismiss these actions because they don't look like grand triumphs. But in reality, they are the foundations of healing. Life isn't always about giant leaps. Sometimes it's about tiny, trembling steps forward. And those steps, repeated day after day, create the road that leads us out of the valleys we once thought we'd never escape. Faith, as Daniel discovered, doesn't guarantee a life free of pain. What it offers is perspective and endurance. In the middle of chaos, faith whispers that the storm will pass. In moments of emptiness, it reassures us that purpose still exists. Think of how this applies to our daily lives. When the weight of work feels unbearable, faith reminds us that we're more than our productivity. When relationships break and hearts shatter, faith assures us that love can still be rebuilt. When the world tells us we're not enough, faith counters with the truth that we are already worthy. And whether faith means God to you, or simply the belief in something greater than your circumstances, Embracing it transforms despair into determination. That's the miracle Daniel lived, and it's one each of us can access if we dare to believe in possibilities greater than our present struggles. Another powerful lesson is the courage of vulnerability. Daniel's decision to open up about his battle with depression broke the silence not only for himself, but for others who were silently suffering. In our everyday lives, we are conditioned to hide our weaknesses, to wear masks of strength so that no one suspects our struggles. Yet the moment we share our pain, we create space for healing, not just for ourselves, but for others too. Imagine how different our workplaces, schools, and families would be if we embraced authenticity instead of perfection. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It is a bridge that connects us through shared humanity. Daniel's story proves that by showing our scars, we can help others find the courage to face their own wounds. And maybe that's the most important truth of all. None of us were meant to fight alone. Finally, Daniel's journey teaches us about transformation. Pain that once seemed meaningless became his greatest source of purpose. His story reminds us that what looks like an ending can actually be the beginning of something extraordinary. Think about your own life. How many times have you survived something you thought would destroy you, only to discover later that it shaped you into someone stronger? This is the mystery of resilience. We don't just endure suffering, we are transformed by it. Every trial, every tear, every sleepless night can one day become the very testimony that inspires someone else to keep going. And in that way, our lives are not just our own. They ripple outward, touching countless others in ways we may never even realize. Your struggle today could become someone else's survival story tomorrow. Thank you for staying with me through this reflection. Your time, your attention, and your openness mean more than you know. If Daniel's story touched you, if it sparked even a flicker of hope in your heart, I invite you to carry that hope forward. Don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that they are not alone. And if you believe in the power of stories to inspire and heal, make sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next message of encouragement. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know how this story spoke to you. And most importantly, share this video with friends, family, or anyone who might be in need of light today. Together, we can spread hope one story at a time.